Yeah, well, if personalities were exclamation marks and stuff, I'd be great.
What does that even mean?
Don't know. Right, anyway. What's up, witches? It's Claudia here, and I have some exciting news. Finally, we have created a Patreon. So you can find us at patreon.com/truecrimecovenpod. At the moment, there is only one tier. It's the familiar tier, and it's just where you can chuck us £1 just to help keep us going every month. We aim to expand on this and create new tiers and exciting content. But for now, if you'd like to support us in this way, please do go ahead. That's patreon.com/truecrimecovenpod. Enjoy the episode, guys. What's up, witches? Hi, I'm Claudia.
And I'm Michael.
And welcome to True Crime Coven. Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Claudia. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I suppose I should really introduce you. So today I am joined by Michael, who professionally is a video producer, video editor, podcaster, YouTuber, extraordinaire, lover of parrots. But
That's one of my biggest traits in my professional life is my love of parrots.
But in his personal life is my boyfriend / the person I am a professional carer for, I would guess.
Yeah, I think that's the best way of putting it. I'd like to just make it clear that that's a very grandiose list of things that I do, when in reality, I'm a Z-list internet funny man who occasionally farts and laughs at stuff like that. But professionally, yes, I do this stuff for a living. Hence, me talking really well on a microphone right now. Oh boy.
So, Michael, other than, being a full-time funny man.
Me, I'm a full-time funny man. Yes.
Would you like to tell everyone a little bit about your podcast and your YouTube and your flim-flams?
My flim-flams? Yes, my flim-flams are vast. I come from a very opposite end of the internet where you're more into the serious kind of nitty-gritty kind of actual coverage and research end of things. And I'm on the internet where I spout out funny articles about dogs pooing on women's faces and whatnot. But it's all about being...
Do you want to maybe say what your podcast is called?
I'm really good at plugging things, as you can tell. Podiots. It's the official Vidiots podcast. Vidiots being the YouTube channel I continue to do and did full-time for a year many moons ago. Yes, now it lives on in podcast form. And I'm going to use those skills and transfer them over to this.
So what does your podcast do? What is it? Shall I just tell everyone?
I guess.
It's a conversational podcast that happens fortnightly between Michael, Pen
and Peter.
Ben and Peter, who were the official Vidiots together.
Yes.
Ben and Peter then went back up north and started a YouTube channel called Triple Jump, where this year they've been joined by Ashton, who is the new Michael, and there's huge rivalry between the two.
Absolute beef.
As can be seen on their Twitter. There was a full brawl at Peter's wedding, which, we had to break up and...
Sorry, the happy day had to end like that, but I couldn't see it being resolved any other way.
I'm also having a secret affair of Ashton.
Wow, all right, it's all coming out tonight, good.
So, yeah, they get together every other week. Sometimes it clashes with us recording. And they bring a thing along to talk about.
Yes.
And it tends to be funny things. They answer a load of questions. And in general, you're sort of three guys who take the piss.
Yes. In one of our early episodes, I did flaunt a little bit of true crime-ness in it when I think I covered a bit of Jeffrey Dahmer on our second episode.
Oh, but no one knows who he is. He's not really covered.
No, he's really,
he's a little
really
known guy.
Yes, that's kind of one of my few forays into it. Forays.
But you are quite a true crime... I don't want to say lover. That's not the vibe. But you do have an interest in true crime. Like we both listened to last podcast on the left.
Yeah, I like to. I think for me personally, it's that delve into the utter depravity of that kind of psyche. It's like what does it take for a person to get to the degree where they're taking the lives of people? Like an unspeakable act. I could never imagine that happening.
Yeah, you've always found Geen quite interesting because his whole psyche of... If you don't know Geen, I don't know what to tell you. He's quite big, he was quite big. But he didn't actually really necessarily kill that many people. No. But he grave robbed and then skinned people and made lamps and nipple belts and all stuff out of him. Quite fascinating. But yeah, you find, for example, him quite interesting because it's such a...
Yeah, it's layered. Like, there's so
weird.
much going on behind the scenes there. It's like, you look at it and it's like, oh, this man made a belt out of nipples. And then you start digging into the why and like his whole identity and his relationship with his mother. And it's
definitely something that nowadays could very much have been prevented with counselling and perhaps, let's be honest, like a gender change.
Yeah, stuff like that. It's less about, oh, look, he killed a person in a funny way. It's more, oh, like that's the reason why. That's what made him that way.
I don't think anyone ever kills someone in a funny way, Michael.
In an interesting way, or blood and guts, I guess, is what I mean by that. I'm not focused on the act of killing.
No,
what I'm gonna end on.
But you can also see why Michael wouldn't go well with a true crime podcast because he would say something that would get him into trouble.
Absolutely. So today I'm gonna try my best, and I can keep a lid on it. I can be.
I really think you will struggle to make light of what we're talking about today.
Good. Yes.
Yeah. Again, I came into this not knowing so much. So there's two crimes in today's episode, and I knew about the lesser crime per se, which is definitely one that is why we're focusing on this. You'll see why.
Okay.
And then what he goes on to do is fucking terrible.
Good. So it starts bad and it gets worse.
And if you manage to find light in that, I think we would have to break up.
Fair. Okay, well, this could be an interesting end to the podcast.
Why would it be an end to the podcast? My podcast will continue very much.
That's true. I'm unsanctimoniously booted out the premises.
So today, I'm going to tell you all about Daniel LaPlante.
A name I'm not at all familiar with.
Well, that answered my next question. Does this ring any bells for you?
No, not a single one.
So... it's kind of been weird not telling you about the case that we're covering today because I'm so used to coming to you like outraged or like, can you believe this happened? And you just sort of like, And for me, like, I think I started to tell you last night, didn't I? And then I was like, oh no.
Oh no, can't be spilling secrets.
I like shushed myself.
Didn't help that I was sat next to you for a couple of hours while you were writing, and
yeah,
my
I put up a pillow fort, didn't I?
My eyes kept just inadvertently glancing over to the screen, but all
you saw was the name, wasn't it?
Yep, and I even forgot that.
Before we start today, I want to give a huge thank you and shout out to author and true crime blogger Joe Turner. He's written a book on this case. It's yet to be released, alongside something else exciting that's happening for him. I don't know how much I can say. But he spoke to the family members involved in this case and really dug deep to get the true details of what went on. So, yeah, I couldn't use it as research material. However, Joe was kind enough to chat with me and dispel some myths about this case, which I really appreciated because I hate embellishment on true crime cases. I always think they're horrible enough. For someone to come along and like add something completely untrue is just so weird. Yeah. I understand a lot of the time it's not done maliciously, and I'm sure myself and this podcast, we're guilty of spreading misinformation by accident, and we will never do that maliciously. But obviously sometimes things are just added in, and I don't know why. So it was really good to be able to chat with him and get the true facts. And so I hope everything is the true facts.
You've gone to a primary source, you're doing your research.
I've tried my best. So thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciated that.
Thank you.
Also, amazingly, Joe has agreed to be interviewed at some point about his life as a true crime writer. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that in the future. Ooh. So our case today, as I said, has two parts to it, but it is going to be a one-parter. The main part that I'm going to be focusing on today is definitely the lesser crime, albeit still horrific. However, the reason I'm doing so is because, one, it's the more infamous of the crimes committed by this perpetrator, and two, it fits in with the Halloween theme, which I mean with the utmost respect for those affected.
Very curious where this is going now.
Yeah, I mean that very respectfully. I just mean... it will become clear. As I tell the story, you'll be like, oh, this is how it's a bit Halloween-y. Okay. But it's still real-life thing, happened to real-life people, was someone's real-life torment, and I'm not making light of that and calling it, like, ooky spooky or anything like that. So we have some horrific trigger warnings for today. Trigger warnings for childhood sexual abuse by a parent and a mental health professional, mention of a parental death from cancer, murder of children, and rape.
Already extra fun that the sexual abuse at the hands of not just, well, let's say a regular ordinary person, but also a mental health professional or a medical professional. Yeah. It's supposed to be, you know, the trusted guiding light of like, it's okay, we can help you. Instead, they turn their back on you and make things worse. And that must be a horrible situation to be in because you got nowhere to turn to at that point.
Well, exactly. So understandably, if these are anything that you can't listen to today, completely understand. These are horrible. And we just hope that you look after yourselves, and we'll see you soon for another episode. Our case today begins with the then 15-year-old Tina Bowen and her 9-year-old sister Karen Bowen. These two siblings lived with their dad Frank and their adopted older sister Kathy. However, Kathy isn't mentioned so much throughout the events I'll be delving into. Tina and Karen had recently lost their mother to cancer, and so as you'd expect, they were both grieving, coming to terms with her death. And understandably, one day the sisters decided to attempt to contact their mother through a séance in the basement. Always something I would advise against, especially if you don't know what you're doing. Also, I know it's probably not a bare basement, like I'm imagining it's probably like a American like family basement.
Yeah.
But in my head, I'm like, that's one of the creepiest places to do a seance.
Yeah, you know,
like that or the attic.
UK basements are not good basements. It's just a concrete box with some dust and spiders in it. So extra spooky for that.
Yeah, but this is an American basement. So they lived in Massachusetts. So it was probably like a proper room, but just in my head. But this séance was carried out through a mixture of teenage naivety and grief, with neither Tina nor Karen really expecting much to come from their efforts. However, that night, whilst both girls laid in their beds, and they didn't really get much, and they didn't get anything really when they were doing it, they were just trying to contact their mum, and nothing really happened.
Testing the waters, just seeing, could.
Yeah, you know, you're grieving your mum, you're missing her, you're doing anything you can to reach out to her. However, that night, whilst both girls laid in their beds, they began to hear a rhythmic knocking against their walls. The sisters were nervous but elated and thought their séance must have worked, and so began asking the spirit, which they presumed to be their late mother, a load of questions, receiving timely and apt knocking responses on their walls in reply. This continued for a little while, and what was once so special and a joy for the siblings, as they believed they were speaking to their mum whom they missed so dearly, soon became a nightmare. The knocking would be so continuous and regular that it would disturb their sleep, and things would eventually progress to the point that objects would begin to disappear and move seemingly of their own accord in their home. Joe Turner, the writer that I mentioned, wrote about how Tina and Karen would find items that they had placed on tables and services strewn about the floor, and furniture moved around from one side of a room to the other. Soon the girls' thoughts changed into thinking that they had been deceived by a dark spirit, into believing that they were conversing with their mother, when in actuality they had been in contact with a demon the whole time.
That sounds like a little trickster who's joined along for the ride and been invited in, and now he's knocking at all hours.
It's very like Annabelle, isn't it? Also, honestly, one of my biggest fears. Like, I don't have rational fears. Like, you know, I'm not afraid of spiders, not afraid of wasps. I thought I was afraid of heights. Turned out I went to go ape and I'm not. Yeah. But demons and accidentally contacting one is right up there.
Yeah, it's like once they're in, it's like, great, now this is a whole process to get rid of you, and you're going to torment me. Thanks.
And genuinely, I still check the corners of our ceilings every night to make sure there's not a demon crouching in there. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, no, I didn't. But great, now I'm going to be on the lookout for them as well.
So, you know, I wasn't really a huge fan of the film Hereditary. I'm very much of the Midsummer camp.
Yes.
But the scene where the mum is in the corner of the ceiling is like nightmare fuel for me. It's etched in my mind.
Agreed.
Bit of a tangent, sorry. Well, the girl's father, Frank, he thought the girls were creating all this drama themselves, saying that this could be the result of the girls struggling to come to terms with the death of their mother, which would only be natural. Mm-hmm. You know, like sometimes psychological and emotional struggles present themselves in unusual ways. You know, perhaps they were doing it for attention, or perhaps they were not like consciously doing it.
Yeah.
And additionally, sometimes people do act out when they're going through something anyway.
Especially like two people like that, it's probably like a bit of like your mental grief kind of lines up and you both kind of share the same experience.
Yeah, it could almost be like a folie à deux.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, to a lesser degree, just I guess when you're both so intimate, like siblings, and you have something like that happen to you, like
you're both grieving the same thing. You both want the same thing, your mum back.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine losing my mum even at this age. Like, I don't even want to talk about it in Tempt Fate. So to be 16 when your hormones are everywhere, and 9 when you're still so young but not that young, I imagine it's really hard to grapple with.
Yeah.
at any age, but at those ages
It's
as
like,
well.
especially like 9, that's kind of the age where you become aware, like, oh, my parents are people, not just robots that raise me. It's
Yeah,
like
there's a lot of times when people between like the ages of like 9 to like 14 tend to get really afraid of people dying around them, and it's because you begin to get aware.
So
I mean, I went for the phase.
yes, yeah.
When I was 12 years old, if my dad was out for too long, I'd be like, oh my God, he's dead.
Yeah.
However, Tina and Karen both insisted to their dad, Frank, that they were not physically responsible, but they believed that they had unintentionally brought a demonic entity into their home. Frank refused to believe such nonsense, as adults always do in these situations.
Yep, fair.
Events would soon ramp up, though, when one night in January 1987, the knocking started yet again. At this point, it was just a normal part of their home life, and usually Tina and Karen wouldn't even pay it much mind anymore. They didn't want to feed into it. Except this evening, it was different. Whereas the knocking would ordinarily sound as though it was coming from inside the walls, this evening it sounded as though it was coming from below, in the basement. So the sisters grabbed some weapons, opting for kitchen knives, and tentatively crept down the basement stairs.
So at this point, the dad's not heard this himself. This is purely the
He's
sister.
not home at this point.
Right, okay.
And I think he has heard it, perhaps. It wasn't really clear, but I think he kind of believes the girls are doing it.
Yeah.
Especially because it tends to be in their bedroom walls at night.
Yeah.
So they tentatively crept down the basement stairs, but nothing could have prepared them for what they would find. Because there, written on the wall of the basement in blood red, were the words, "I'm in your room. Come and find me."
Ooh, fighting talk. Wow, interesting.
Petrified, and understandably so, Tina and Karen wasted no time and booked it out of the house, knocking on a neighbour's house and waiting for their father to return home. When Frank returned, he once again thought that his daughters must be responsible for the writing, and so made them both attend counselling, believing that this would help them with processing their mother's death and result in the end of this bizarre behaviour. Which, I kind of agree with his approach here. I know we always say, oh my God, listen to the kids.
Yeah.
But also getting them help with their grief and perhaps not feeding into the hysteria is a really responsible thing to do as a parent.
Yeah, I mean, despite the spooky knockings and writing on the wall, if that hadn't happened, it's still a good idea to get them into some kind of counselling. Just it's a lot to take on as a kid, and you need to help navigate that. But this, I guess, from his point of view, it's just like the kids are acting up. Let's try and sort it out.
Also, he's just lost his wife.
Yes.
He probably isn't doing the best himself.
Yes.
So he's very much just he's suddenly a single parent who's grieving himself. He's got 2 daughters, which I imagine is also quite daunting when you're a father to suddenly have 2 daughters and you've got to teach them how to be women per se.
Yeah.
Must be daunting in and of itself. And I imagine he was just I'm not feeding into this.
Yeah, it must also be, you must look at those kids and see the wife in them.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's a horrible thing to navigate.
Yeah, exactly. So I imagine it was probably very frustrating for Tina and Karen, and I would personally be pulling my hair out, trying to get my parents to listen to me. But looking at it from a stressed parent point of view, it seems quite a caring and pragmatic approach, really. However, something similar would occur a few weeks later, when once again the girls were home alone one evening when they heard a familiar knocking start up, this time from behind Tina's bedroom wall. When the girls entered the room, they were once again greeted with a message in blood red. Only, now it said, "I'm back. Find me if you can." And honestly, at this point, I'm leaving the house and never coming back.
Yeah, no, screw that.
Actually, I think I'm leaving in the first instance.
I think even just the knocking's enough for me.
Yeah, we're both...
I'm very flighty. Even the mice in the walls make me feel very uncomfortable. And I know what mice are. They're a tangible entity. A horrible demon tapping and scrolling on the walls. That's I don't know. Nope. Just I'm booking into an Airbnb.
Michael, I ever told you how safe and protected you make me feel?
Oh, I'm a big baby. It's no, yeah, even the mice are terrifying enough. Spiders, no. Any kind of.
I know. I deal with the spiders and the mice and the.
What do I do? I cook food.
You cook me dinner every night, which is very, very nice. And you're a good cook. Now, sensibly, in my opinion, the girls once again fled to their neighbour's house and called Frank to come home from work, which he did. And once again, he blamed the events on his daughters and their grief. He marched straight on into their home to prove to them that it was empty and no one else besides the family was inside. However, when Frank entered, he was greeted with the house being in a state different to how Tina, Karen and the neighbour had described to him. And when he walked into Tina's room, An additional message now accompanied the writing on the other wall. This one simply read, "Marry me."
Oh, bit of a turn.
Yeah, bit of a shift in tone.
And hard to get, I guess, at the beginning.
Then Frank's eyes went to the other side of his daughter's room, because there stood a strange and unexpected sight. Standing there was a teenage boy with dark, greasy hair holding a hatchet.
Oh, good.
Now, some sources state that the boy was wearing a wedding dress or the Bowen girl's dead mother's clothes and wig. But Joe Turner cleared this up for me and said that he has been told by Tina herself that this wasn't the case and has been fabricated somewhere along the line. I kind of suppose because it's creepier or perhaps not unintentionally. But in my opinion, you don't really need to add much to this to make it creepy. Like, it's a boy stood in the room with a hatchet.
Yeah, that's a pretty terrifying image. Children in general are scary, but add a hatchet and that's not a good look.
Yeah. But who was this guy? And why was he doing this? So, here's where Daniel LaPlante comes into the picture. So, Daniel J. LaPlante, most commonly known as Danny or Dan, was born on May 15th, 1970, in the town of Townsend, Massachusetts. Growing up, he lived with his mother Elaine Moore and stepfather David Moore, as well as his two brothers, Stephen and Matthew, in a house that neighbours described the grounds of being similar to a junkyard with loads of old cars. Growing up, sadly, Daniel was sexually abused, reportedly by both his father and stepfather. According to an article written by Joe Turner, Daniel's father was a disciplinarian in his life, and the method of punishments he chose consisted of physical, emotional, and sexual torment. And, like, honestly, I don't even know. Obviously, the father was mentally unwell in some way, but it's not good to emotionally or physically abuse your children, but the sexual element is just so much darker as well.
Yeah, that's like a really evil, like, I'm going to make you really regret whatever you've done by just
Or it's an excuse.
Yeah, true. But yeah, that feels like that's quite an extreme end of quote-unquote punishment is to... Yeah, that's... No matter how you spin it, I mean... Yeah.
There's not many details as to what the abuse was, and his school life was no better. Daniel attended the Catholic St. Bernard's High School, and most of his classmates described him as a weird loner with bad hygiene who was generally not very friendly, which resulted in him having very few friends, with one classmate named Patrick McEwen recalling that Daniel never liked to go to parties, nor did he like to talk much, which I kind of say is fair enough. Like, some people are just introverts. That doesn't make you innately weird.
Yeah, and I mean, even that is just the bad home life is not going to make any kid when they get to school want to be happy or friendly. It's just not a good environment to sprout any friendships.
And you've not been shown that, like, how to be social, and you've not been shown that humans are really, like, good to interact with.
Yeah, when your whole experience with humans is just relentless abuse and just like a messy home life, it's very hard to want to like see the point in going any further than that group of people.
Exactly, and your confidence isn't exactly going to be high.
Yes.
Academically, things weren't going much better for Daniel, who was diagnosed with dyslexia at an early age, but despite this, he received little to no support at school. Due to his poor hygiene and abnormal behaviour, Daniel was referred by school officials to a psychiatrist, which I find quite refreshing. Mm-hmm. Like, often you do find that schools just ignore children and teenagers who are clearly struggling, so, you know, didn't get help for the dyslexia, but got a psychiatrist.
Very good going.
However, of course, this didn't go well, which might be the biggest understatement ever, as the psychiatrist did end up diagnosing Daniel with hyperactivity disorder, but rather than then treating Daniel, his psychiatrist went on to sexually abuse him for the next year during their sessions together.
Oh, that's gross. That's really gross.
So once again, he's been introduced to a male figure, father figure, perhaps, in his life, like some sort of authoritarian male figure.
Yeah.
And just been sexually abused by them.
Yeah, great. Really going to cement those problems later in life.
Yeah, and it could have been such a positive experience for him. This could have like turned his life around. This could have been the person who completely, it didn't fix him, but...
I mean, could have at least helped him to better understand the situation and himself. Instead, it's just like a big punch in the face. Like, oh, look, here's this big open door, like a route to, you know, discovering more about yourself and being comfortable and learning. And then it's just, you know, doors shut on you.
And I imagine he was an easy target as well, because he'd come to expect this perhaps from male figures.
Yeah.
Additionally, of course, this meant that his hyperactivity disorder was also untreated because they weren't treating it in the sessions. At age 15, Daniel became a small-time thief in his hometown, spending his free time breaking into people's homes and taking their things of value. However, what started off as normal burglary per se, soon became a way for him to inflict torment and play mind games with his neighbours. As Daniel started breaking into people's properties to not only steal things, but also leave behind items or move things in a way that made it obvious someone had been in your space, but like not immediately so.
Oh, so it's not just stealing stuff for money. It's like there's a thrill to it. There's this like I think it must be a control thing. It's like I'm doing this,
and I imagine it's interesting you say control because that didn't occur to me. But I imagine when you know how often it's, I mean, I don't want to create another trigger warning here, but often it's the high achieving academics who have eating disorders, and it's children. So, for example, when I developed OCD, it was in retaliation to my parents divorcing. I couldn't control that, so I started having OCD because I could control something. It's quite interesting that you say it's about control because I didn't really make that connection, but I suppose it is. Like, I can't control my home life and what's going on, but I can control how I make others feel by doing this thing.
It's like my home life's been disturbed and turned upside down, so I'm going to do the same for others, even in this kind of probably quite small way in terms of just removing an object or moving stuff around. It's that little bit of like,
that's the thing.
You don't know who's doing this, it's me.
Yeah, so it wasn't huge things, but like he wouldn't go in and ransack. But for example, he'd come in and move like an ornament and a plant, like switch them round, and it would be something that someone like you, for example, would definitely miss it.
Yes.
And then a few days later, it'd be like, huh, did I do that?
Yeah. It's just a little bit like,
and it's a lot more sinister in some ways because if you come in and like your TV's gone and you know your expensive ornaments gone and all this, you know something's happened, but you know what's happened and you're devastated and you report it to the police. But if you come in and things have been moved around, you're like, did that happen?
Yeah.
And like, what do you report to the police? Oh, someone came in and moved my plant.
It's a violating experience. It's like once you realise what's going on, like someone's been in my house, then
it gets under your skin, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I guess same violation that he's had at home. I mean, I'm going way into psychoanalysis here, but it seems like he's kind of like trying to reflect some of what happens in his home life and give those negative emotions to others.
It's a way to control. Like he doesn't get to control anything else, so he can control this. So yeah, eventually Daniel was only breaking into people's homes for this purpose. He wasn't even stealing anymore. He was just playing mind games and instilling fear and anxiety. In 1986, at the age of just 16, Daniel would meet someone who, in his poorly formed mind, would become a new obsession for him. And this is where Daniel's connection with Tina and Karen Bowen would begin. So, 15-year-old Tina Bowen, who we spoke about before, gave a local boy her phone number. And it was this boy who then passed her phone number on to Daniel, who told her that his friend who went to the same school as her had given him her number. Daniel lied to Tina that he was good-looking, tall, muscular and blonde. But the reality was, whilst he was physically fit and like a strong athlete, he played soccer, Daniel had dark hair and wasn't conventionally attractive. And like we said, he had bad hygiene, so he was sort of greasy, spotty, etc. Tina would chat with Daniel on the phone regularly for a while, with her younger 9-year-old sister, Karen Bowen, sometimes joining in. Which is very nice of her, because I imagine that's like the same age gap me and my sister had. If my sister was chatting to a boy, she would not have let me join in.
No, like, get out, throw you out the door and lock it, and then, like, leave me alone, this is embarrassing.
Tina's a very tolerant older sister.
Yeah.
Daniel saw Tina at an open school event, like one of those evenings where you go and tour a school, like see if you want to go to it. And he decided to take his chance to introduce himself to her. Obviously, Tina was taken aback because the guy standing in front of her, as I said, was not tall, was not blonde, and wasn't conventionally good looking.
Yes.
However, Tina was well brought up, and as I think a lot of women do out of fear of being impolite, she agreed to go on a couple of dates with Daniel. Interestingly, it's not clear how exactly Daniel knew what Tina looked like. The two had apparently never met before, and this being 1986, it's not as though like social media was around. He didn't just stumble across her profile and know what she looked like. So some speculate that maybe he was already in her walls.
Oh, I don't like that.
Maybe he was already living in her house.
Oh,
but that's just speculation. Tina has told Joe Turner that she doesn't believe that he was.
But at least it's likely he's had some presence around her without her really knowing, like, be it on the street.
He knows who she is.
Yes.
And that's just kind of creepy in and of itself. Now, as I said, Tina politely agreed to go on a date with Daniel, despite his greasy appearance and bad hygiene. I mean, I suppose alongside her doing it out of politeness, a part of her probably reasoned that they had chatted enough on the phone and got on well enough for her to see how this would play out.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad idea to base a relationship off of personality rather than looks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, fair enough. She thought she'd give him a chance. Again, Tina seems really nice.
Yes, incredibly.
So Daniel took Tina out to the local fair one night. And you know me, hell of a date. Love a fair.
Right out the fair.
Love an arcade.
Some fresh donuts, bit of go on the waltzer, vomit in front of each other. Great bonding experience.
Yeah, no, but seriously, I love a fun fair.
Oh, same.
Anyway, during the date, Tina confided in Daniel about her recent loss of her mother due to cancer and said that they were solely cared for by their father, Frank. Now, whereas most people might respond in a way that portrays sympathy and offer their condolences, if someone says this to me, I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. I can't imagine what you're going through.
Yeah.
And then you're sort of guided by how that person then continues. If they start talking about the person they've lost, you ask questions that are appropriate. And if they change the subject, you realise that they don't really want to talk about it.
Yeah, you don't stand there and go, oh God, that must be awful. How is it? You don't force anything out of them. You kind of let them lead and you...
Exactly.
Yeah.
But not Daniel.
Uh-oh.
Instead, he seemed way too interested in the details of Tina's mother's death.
Oh, God.
With Tina even going as far as to describe him as obsessed with it. Asking her how she felt at the exact moment she died and how much her mum suffered.
Oh.
Which is just yikes.
You don't not even family members, close family members talk about that. It's just
That's the thing, I wouldn't even ask you, and we're very obviously close. We've lived together 4 years.
Yes. You don't go into the details of the act of it happening and how horrible it was for everyone and how
especially
much
not on a
suffered.
First date.
Yeah, that's definitely shows there's some weird maybe ulterior motive.
It shows definitely emotional stunting.
Yes.
If not that you're a complete weirdo.
Yeah.
I don't know how to nicely say it.
Yeah, it's just
the nice way of saying it is very emotionally immature and emotionally stunted. But I think most people would just be like, that is fucking weird. Understandably, after an hour, Tina made an excuse and cut the date short. Now, some sources say that they dated on and off for a very short period of time. Jo Turner actually writes how she didn't see Daniel again through choice.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of conflicting information out there, just about this case in general. Even his birth date, one person says it's the 16th, one person says it's the 15th. So, there's even different...
when even things like birth are disputed, you can't get into the details of how many dates someone had.
There's even different high schools mentioned that he went to, with one place mentioning both. So It's one of those things where maybe they dated for a very short period of time, but the main takeaway is that it was in no way a huge serious relationship. It was, if they did date for a little while, it was no more than a few dates.
Yeah, at most it was putting feelers out, seeing what they're like, and she pretty quickly thought, nope, not into this.
And I think pretty much it was out of politeness, and she didn't really know how to cut it off, maybe.
Yes.
If she did see him again. Tina basically did not feel the same way about him. However, it was a few weeks after Tina's first date with Daniel that her and her younger sister would decide to carry out that seance in their home, and the strange knocking would then start. The strange knocking, which they had thought was paranormal. The strange knocking that, coupled with moving furniture and eerie messages in blood red, they had then deduced to even be demonic. It turned out that all along that had been the work of an obsessed teenage boy, Daniel LaPlante.
Oh, God.
But let's go back to Frank discovering Daniel in Tina's bedroom. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Upon spying the boy, a scuffle ensued. However, Daniel was able to just vanish, seemingly into thin air, leaving Frank confused and dumbfounded as to how he could just basically disappear.
Right.
Frank called the police, and when they arrived, they were able to ascertain that the messages had, thankfully, been written in ketchup. Which...
Sorry, that's just quite gone from bloody scrawls on the wall to a bit of sweet ketchup.
So I was thinking, wouldn't you smell it?
Yeah, that was my first thought, is ketchup, especially after a couple hours on the wall, that ketchup's going to be bad.
Yeah, but I don't know if you'd necessarily stick around long enough to smell it, and maybe you wouldn't want to get close enough to smell it.
Yeah, it's not a funny situation, but it's just a funny description.
Yeah, he hasn't even gone for red paint.
Yeah. He
hasn't even,
They could have gone to the butcher's, got some cow's blood, just he's got the hinds out.
You're dangerous, Jesus. Giving people ideas as well. Police then began to search the Bowens house to determine just how Daniel had been able to gain access to the property in the first place, and then how he was able to disappear so effortlessly. During the search, one of the officers, named Steve Bezanson, discovered a crawl space behind a built-in cupboard in Tina's bedroom.
Oh, that's literally what I was thinking when you said he disappeared out of thin air.
Yeah.
Like maybe he's got like a hidden bookcase. There's actually a door that he slips out of, but yeah, it's literally just a little door behind her. Oh.
And inside, he found Daniel LaPlante. Again, some sources state that there were tunnels within the walls of the Bowen house that allowed Daniel to move unseen around the residence. As you see in like some American houses, they've got like crawl spaces, which we don't really have in the UK so much.
No, we don't have a lot in the UK. Americans seem to have these houses with all these floors and basements and air vents.
And like underneath crawl spaces and...
Yeah, we've just got walls and floor, and that's it.
God. But Joe Turner actually spoke to the Bowen family, and they said that this wasn't the case, and that instead Daniel had like set small spots. Some were really tiny. They were like 6 inches wide.
So when you say separate small spots, do you mean like at different parts of the house, not like connected?
Yeah, not
so
connected.
So he'd like hide somewhere for like 6 hours, hear sounds in the rooms, get out, scuttle.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so creepy, because
I don't know what's worse.
I think it's that, because like, if someone's in the walls, it's all making me feel really uncomfortable.
You can see why it's a Halloween case.
Yeah, God, it's proper like Halloween movie material. Like the person.
There is actually a Halloween movie like this.
Oh God. Yeah, I think like at least if they're in the walls, like they're in their separate area, they're away.
Halloween movie, horror movie, sorry.
Yeah, like they're in this separate area. But if they're like going out of that area into your space and like traversing it, using almost like a jungle gym to navigate, that's messed up.
Well, that's the thing, and we'll get onto it a little bit. So he had set small spots, and he used to observe the family from them, mainly Tina, because he was obsessed.
Yeah.
So 2 of the main spots were in the basement, and then he obviously had one in Tina's room, and then the rest is sort of hearsay as to where the other ones were. Hopefully it'll be cleared up a bit when Joe's book comes out. So all along, the girls hadn't been communicating with their mother, nor a demonic spirit, or anything otherworldly at all. But in fact, they'd been interacting with Daniel, who had been obsessed with Tina and living within the walls of their home since their first date, around a year before he was discovered.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, at first they thought it was a few months. And once again, this is something that Joe Turner, like honestly, I can't think of enough, was able to clarify that it ended up being about a year.
Oh God, that's quite, like, I mean, horrificness aside, that's quite an impressive stint. That's like, he's very committed to whatever it is his motives were there. I mean, I guess just to watch them and keep an eye on them, but it's like, that's a hell of a stint.
Yeah, I mean... So he had managed to go undetected for so long because he had worked out the family's schedules, including Frank's, and sort of mainly Frank's. So he was therefore able to make sure like he carried out his torment of moving the furniture and moving places when no one was in to avoid being caught, and then save his knocking for mostly when the girls were home alone.
Yeah.
And mostly to like where they were.
Yeah.
Following his arrest for frogging in the Bowen's house, and yes, you heard that right, frogging. Which is written with a PH instead of a...
Frogging.
Instead of an F. So it's when someone secretly lives inside another person's home. This is a real thing.
Oh.
Getting its name from the animal, despite not being spelt that way, as frogs hop from pad to pad.
Oh, that's interesting.
As some froggers do when they get close to being caught or decide to move on.
Oh, this is, I mean, like cuckooing, like is like a similar where people take over a home for...
Oh, yeah.
Like, but they're more obvious about it. I guess frogging is the...
Frogging is like you literally live in like someone's attic or their walls or like their basement or their like garage or something. Yeah. It's terrifying to me that this is a thing, and I hope you know that I've unlocked a new fear.
Yep, good.
But there's also a film with frogging as part of the plot. It's called I See You. There's a few films where like it includes people like living within the walls, but I See You, they actually talk about frogging.
Yeah.
I watched this film and I remember speaking with Ryan, our friend who isn't with us anymore, about it because he was really into films. So any film I watched, I spoke to him. Yeah, I really enjoyed this film, but it's got really mixed reviews. But in that, it is about someone who actively is frogging and then witnesses something. And I recommend it. I think it's on Netflix. Following his arrest, Daniel was placed into a juvenile facility where he was held until October 1987, which, if my maths is correct, was only around a 9-month sentence at most.
which does not feel enough. But again, he wasn't an adult. Juvenile sentences are always pretty lenient. Again, it's like it's a creepy crime, but like to go on the police side of things, which is always fun. It's like it's non-destructive. It's freaks some people out, but no one got hurt.
Yeah, that's the thing. No one got physically hurt.
Yeah, it's
mentally though they did. Yes, emotionally they did.
Yes, but yeah, like I mean, harrowing experience. But if on the outset it's like no, everyone's come out of this unscathed. It's a bit weird. Yeah. I mean, personally, I wouldn't be very happy if it happened to me and that was someone's sentence, though. No, absolutely not.
But his worst crime was yet to come. So that was part one. That was the sort of Halloween crime. And then as I researched this more, I was like, oh my God, there is more to this and it is worse.
Almost as if all these things he did were warning signs of things to come.
Yeah, honestly, time and time again with each case we cover where someone's got a lengthy criminal history. I'm thinking of Mark Dixie, who murdered Sally Ann Bowman. Like, they've got these lengthy criminal pasts and it all eventually accumulates in a horrific crime and you just think, yeah, I could have seen that coming. But I know hindsight is 20/20. So, after his release in October 1987, Daniel LaPlante proved to have not been reformed in the slightest, returning pretty much immediately to his burgling ways. And on December 1st, 1987, less than 2 months after his release, Daniel's criminal behaviour would escalate dramatically and tragically.
Oh wow, so it was pretty quick after.
Yeah, there was, it was naught, I don't even want to say 0 to 100, 0 to 1,000.
Yes.
Daniel, armed with 2 handguns, which he had stolen from one of his neighbours' houses, broke into the home of the Gustafsson family, who lived just a half-mile away from his own home. Inside was the mother Priscilla, who worked as a nursery school teacher, and her 2 young children, 8-year-old Abigail and 5-year-old William. Daniel first raped and killed Priscilla by shooting her in the head multiple times at close range, leaving her laying face down on her bed. Next, he drowned the 2 young children in separate bathtubs, William in the upstairs bathroom and Abigail in the downstairs. Devastatingly, husband and father Andrew Gustafsson would then come home to find his wife's body on their bed. He called the police, who then found the 2 children also deceased. Additionally, they found a number of restraints strewn about the home, left by the perpetrator, which makes them think that the reason he killed the mum first was to sort of get her out of the way, but obviously she was restrained in some way and the kids are restrained, and just
it's all nasty.
Just all disgusting.
There's a hell of an escalation. It's not even like going back to the original victims. It's like it wasn't a personal thing with them. They were just an outlet, I guess.
They were just there. Yeah,
they just happened to be what he landed upon. Gets out. He's like, all right, that's burned now. I've got to find something new in it. Really, really messy.
So, thoughts immediately turned to the recently released Daniel LaPlante, but it was soon discovered that he had fled the area. Given that he was armed and obviously a danger to everyone, a manhunt began. Meanwhile, a few towns away, Daniel broke into another woman's house, kidnapped her in her own car. Luckily, that woman escaped, physically unharmed, probably emotionally quite harmed, and Daniel was then spotted by a member of the public who recognised him from his photo on the news. 48 hours after the manhunt had begun, Daniel LaPlante was found in probably the best place for him, a bin, and was arrested. Confirming that he was the person responsible for the senseless murders was a single hair found on his sock, which was later to be confirmed to have belonged to 8-year-old Abigail Gustafsson. A year later, Daniel LaPlante was found guilty of the 3 murders and sentenced to 3 life sentences. And it is in prison that he thankfully remains to this day. Since being there, Daniel has shown little to no remorse for his crimes. He has tried to sue the courts multiple times for violation of his human rights. And whilst I understand that prisoners should still have their human rights respected, an eye for an eye and the whole world's blind, I also find it pretty fucking rich that when murderers and stalkers get upset about their human rights being violated, like, okay, what about the 2 young girls you stalked and invaded the privacy of for a whole year? What about the young mother you killed? What about the 2 innocent children, both under the age of 10, that you drowned? Like, what about their human rights?
Yeah, with people like that, obviously it's not you can't tie them with the same brush, but it's like a narcissist kind of thing where I want what I want and I'll do anything to get it, and like I don't matter who pays the price for it. Like it's maybe that's not what they're thinking. It's just like that strive to just disregard others in pursuit of what they want. Yeah, just like
no thought for others. Like, to me, I'm just like, what about their basic right to live? Like, they had a right to live and to grow up, and these girls had a right to live in their house and not be, to have privacy and not be spied upon, and to also then not carry that with them for the rest of their life. Like, it's hard enough to be, I guess, to be a young girl growing up in this world. Never mind actually having that fear instilled in you in a different way because you've had someone literally watching you from your bedroom crawl space. Yes. Like, and it's difficult because, like, I understand that, like, to not give inmates their human rights is a really slippery slope, and it says a lot about society, but it's just really, you're gonna fucking go there. However, the human rights in question as well will also make your blood boil a little bit. In one case, Daniel claimed that he wasn't given the sufficient materials to practice his satanic beliefs.
Oh, so it's not like food or comfortable sleeping, it's like his extracurricular activities.
And, like, I understand that once again, someone's religion is a protected belief. By law, it is. So this could be viewed as no different to, like, not allowing a Bible or a Quran. So not giving them that, I understand. However, I just want to point out that technically, Satanism is an anti-religion. They have no actual scripture. Like, yeah, you could say Anton LaVey, but actually, no set scripture.
There's not, like, any...
There's no set materials needed.
That's what I'm looking for, like, things that you do, like, traditions?
There's no real beliefs. It's an anti-religion. And also, part of the satanic belief system is that you don't kill others, you don't hurt children. He's done all these things. Like, it's just rich that he's like...
It's almost as if he doesn't actually understand the religion, and he's just, I think it's one of those cases where, oh, Satan, yeah, all right, cool, right on.
And like, as someone who kind of like always says that I'm a Satanist / Wiccan, like I'm always sort of between the two with my beliefs, I personally say, don't give him anything. Just, to weigh in my point there, don't give him anything. He doesn't need anything.
It's not required to practice.
Additionally, on March 22nd, 2017, a resentencing hearing was set for Daniel in Middlesex Superior Court in Woburn, Massachusetts, where he asked for a reduction in his sentence. And he did apologise in this hearing and said that he is sorry for his actions. First time I believe he's ever shown remorse.
Yeah.
And he sort of asked for this hearing because he said that it was mentioned previously in court that rulings stated that juveniles convicted of murder should be given a meaningful opportunity to re-engage with society, along with a new law which allowed juveniles convicted of murder with extreme cruelty and atrocity to ask for parole after they'd been behind bars for a minimum of 30 years, which of course would have been the case for Daniel in 2017. Yes. But after a forensic psychiatrist evaluated Daniel LaPlante and determined him to not be remorseful for his crimes, the judge decided to affirm his 3 life sentences with the possibility of parole after 45 years.
Well, yeah, it's not like, I don't think he's ever recognised any of the victims as actual human beings. No. It's like, essentially, he's God, and he's playing with people as he wants. Yeah, it's just total disregard for the actual feelings involved like, in that.
When you say, like, I know he kind of didn't have a chance, I'm not giving him an excuse. Lots of people are abused, and they don't go on to abuse, especially not murder people and, like, young children. But in a way, he didn't really have a chance. He probably wasn't going to have the best life. However, he's only come out 30 years later when he knows he can ask for parole based upon this alleged ruling. He's only then come out to say sorry. He's bitched and moaned the whole time he's in prison about his rights, but not shown any remorse for his victims. And also, it seems like from the age of 14, I think, is when he first started burglaring people. From that age, he's just continuously committed crime.
Yeah.
At every opportunity. So it's not like he can say, I'm a one-off offender who did something horrific, but it was a one-off. The whole time he's been even sort of towards adulthood.
Yeah. Did you say like he had like a hyperactivity disorder? Like is that like in similar strain to ADHD or?
Yeah, so ADHD has like different I looked it up. ADHD has different parts to it. It's actually AD/HD apparently, so it's attention deficit / hyperactive disorder. So I don't think he necessarily had the attention deficit. I don't fully understand the nuances of it. But yeah, he was hyperactive, but a killer that does not make.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Like, is it quite a common trait with people with hyperactivity disorder? Like, it's something not in myself I'd noticed, but I probably can't say too much what I used to do, but I used to work data entry for a law firm, and I used to manually transfer, like, basically just putting stuff in a new database. So I got to see criminals' records, and like there'd be like people who would just stretch offenders, and it like lifelong, just like everything you could think of is like in their file. And he's probably in that road where a lot of people with ADHD, it's that pursuit of dopamine. So like you do, it's the ultimate rush, like nothing else. Like it kind of, it's like, it feels great. It's again,
it's like a new thrill.
Yeah, like drugs and
but
theft.
Rather than it being drugs or like skydiving.
Yeah, it's like
it's murder and rape and stalking.
Well, yeah, I think like maybe if it wasn't for his traumatic childhood with all the abuse, maybe he would have gone down the line.
He could have just been an adrenaline junkie.
He could have just been like, you regular criminal. Like, I mean, I'm saying this as if it's a good thing, but you know, it's like people have their outlets, and some people do this. It's way of coping, not great, but I think as a child, that on the cards, as well as just having his trust of humans revoked, and like I think it's
probably the not ever being shown that human life means anything or has any inherent value.
Yeah, I think he probably's gone into it with a general disgust and detestment, so that's kind of latched onto that criminal behaviour.
And I get that.
And create a perfect storm. For
example, I have, you know, as well, you know, and I don't know if I mentioned on the podcast, but I have borderline personality disorder, and from working in the job I work in, I see, you know, traits of that disorder in patients sometimes, and I see patterns, but I don't feel like you can ever justify your behaviour on a disorder you have or a mental health problem, because like I have said before, and as you know, this quote comes from Marcus Parks, your mental illness isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility. And it all comes down to that, like, yeah, maybe he didn't have a chance in life, but actually he made decisions.
Yes.
However ill-formed his brain might have been, he made these decisions. And regardless, he still stands there as what, like he was in his 50s when he said that?
Yeah.
When, you know, like, he's an adult now.
Yeah.
I understand he might not be as well-formed as your general 50-year-old, but he was an adult. And to only really come out and say sorry when you're eligible for parole just doesn't cut it.
Yeah. Do you have like a verbatim quote of what he said, or is it just like, I'm sorry for what I did?
There is one, but I don't have it written down.
I was going to say, because I mean...
But it is pretty much just like, oh, I'm really sorry.
Like, a lawyer could coax him into saying the right thing, but like, I mean, you can tell, because it's like, I'm sorry for
It's a two-line thing, put it that way.
It's a what?
It's a two-line thing that he said.
Yeah, when really it should be like, I'm sorry for the distress I've caused and the actions, and I realise I was wrong.
I mean, we have said more about what he's done than he has publicly. Yeah. So when Daniel will be eligible for parole, he'll be 62 years old, which is still, like, young.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be relatively fit at that age, and like it's not like he's walking out of prison an old man. He's not exactly. He's going to have a lot of adjusting to do, but he's not going to come out decrepit and unable to integrate or do anything in society.
It's a considerable chunk of his life, but he took 3 lives.
Yeah.
2 of which had barely begun, and he can potentially walk out of prison at 62 years old. Yes. Andrew Gustafson would go on to find love once more and remarry. Although, of course, he was forever changed by finding his first wife murdered and having to come to terms with the murders of his 2 young children. Although I doubt he ever did come to terms with it. I don't think anyone ever does.
No.
Sadly, he died in 2014, but he was buried with Priscilla, Abigail and William, reunited at last. And it really made me want to cry when I read that and saw the tombstone. Oh. On his deathbed, Andrew reportedly said, "Don't ever let him out. He should rot in prison," when asked about Daniel LaPlante. And my God, like, if I ever hear, like, that they're thinking of releasing Daniel, I will be part of Andrew's voice and scream and shout that he should stay in, because that wish is the one thing that should be upheld.
Yeah.
Because honestly, is he going to be reformed?
In general, there's a degree to which prison helps. I think for someone like that, it's like you can lock him up forever, but ultimately, like, they need to basically be put into their own separate society, not in prison. There's some kind of like aftercare thing where someone's got a monitor on them, like a mental health facility. You can't.
And this is the thing, we know a lot of the time with American prisons, there isn't a lot of
Yes, it's just
rehabilitation.
Lock someone up until they rot, and that's
also,
it.
I don't think he should get a chance at life again. I'm sorry, I don't.
No.
And I don't often think that about criminals. I feel like most people who listen to this, I'm not always that harsh about criminals, but I just feel like with him, he's shown at a very young age through, okay, like we said, maybe it's not completely his fault, but he's just showing that he's not an okay person.
Yeah, I think it's very clear that he's unable to become a functioning member of society.
And and even if he can, why should he get the chance when Abigail and William never got a chance? Never mind Priscilla, she was only in her 30s herself. So, can you tell that I feel certain ways about this? And what of the Bowens? Well, the whole family are understandably still haunted by what they went through, and I would imagine what Daniel then went on to do to the Gustafson family. Like, that must have also terrified them, because it's the potential of what he could have done to them. Like,
yeah.
Their story could have ended like that as well. However, Tina, Daniel's main focus, has decided to forgive him, and states that she does not harbour any personal ill feelings towards him. However, Kathy, Tina's adopted older sister, who didn't feature much in the telling of the story, says that she is still unable to sleep in the dark, and says that she is counting down the days until Daniel dies. And as he is only 52 now, so sorry, he must have been 40 odd in 2017, unfortunately she could still be waiting for some time.
Yeah, that's going to stick with you.
Yeah,
that's going to it's probably one of those things where, first 20 years, it's on your mind, and then you kind of slowly start forgetting about it. Then you have one night in the house.
Oh, yeah, flashbacks.
Yeah, you're just like,
completely.
Fuck.
PTSD is.
Yeah, it's going to give you whiplash and come back, and that's never going to go away. And when you hear the news of, this dude's out of prison, you're going to be on high alert.
I think I'd very much never be able to live in an old house that has spaces like that again.
No, God, no.
I'd be like, new build flat, please.
Yeah. Cement in all the walls. Nothing can live in there.
Throughout Joe Turner's research, he has spoken to Daniel himself and has written how he suffered from a child onset type conduct disorder and multiple personality disorder. Both of these made him predisposed to violent and disruptive behaviours. Is
conduct disorder just essentially another way of saying he was a naughty boy and couldn't...
I think conduct disorder is a bit more like antisocial behaviour.
Okay.
But I think we don't call it that anymore.
Yeah.
Whilst the strict and abusive treatment from his father, contrasted by his mother's treatment of him as an angel, so apparently his dad, obviously, as we know, was horrible to him, or his stepfather was horrible to him. Again, I'm a bit blurry on how much it was his dad and his stepfather, or if it was both. So apparently, obviously, they were horrible to him and really strict and abusive in many ways, every way. But his mum sort of saw him as this angel, like butter wouldn't melt. And apparently, it's thought that these contrasting treatments in his life really skewed his outlook on life and his emotional control, which I would imagine because you're constantly at two extremes.
Yeah, and they are extremes of extremes. Yeah.
It just doesn't seem like he had any sort of normal parental figure.
It's interesting because usually you're very used to children having terrible childhoods and nothing but you're not used to it, but in some cases they have bad upbringings and it seems like it's just dark, and then it's weird to have the other side of the coin thrown in here where the mother's you're such a perfect, my little angel, couldn't do wrong. Yeah,
it's really odd, but I can imagine that would really mess you up as well.
It's going to cross some wires.
And of course it goes without saying that those with multiple personality disorder are not inherently dangerous. It just happens in Daniel's case that he sort of had the perfect set of circumstances surrounding this diagnosis that then was able to result in what he became. Furthermore, it appears that Daniel's sexual urges developed at a young age, perhaps due to the sexual assault from...
Well, that's a common thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, doesn't mean that everyone who is sexually assaulted and develops these urges then goes on to carry them out in ways that are detrimental to anyone else. It just means that a lot of people tend to perhaps go through a period of being hypersexual. But a lot of people, get help for this or channel this in a way that's destructive to them maybe, but not to anyone else. Daniel obviously didn't go down that route. He was also addicted to pornography from the age of 14, which I would imagine is actually probably more prevalent now than it used to be, because it's more accessible now.
Yes, you don't have to go into a forest to find a box of magazines anymore. It's just...
You speaking about your childhood?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
This led to warped sexual development and made Daniel begin chasing bigger and more dangerous highs. So you've got not only the hyperactivity disorder that might make him chase dopamine highs, you've also got the sexual urges, the addiction to pornography. It's just this basic like this perfect boiling pot of mess and criminal behaviour. Just
snowballing and getting bigger and bigger.
Overall, Joe Turner believes that Daniel LaPlante should never be released, and I'd be surprised if anyone was able to disagree with that viewpoint. He was just 16 when he stalked the Bowens and just 17 when he committed a triple homicide. And I personally believe that he should stay in prison for the rest of his days.
It's interesting. Like, what is prison? Like, that sounds like such a stupid question. Like, is it supposed to reform? I mean, this is getting really into the ethics of something I know nothing about, but is prison there to reform people and help them get better?
I think
or is it just a place you stand here and rot, you
I think
scumbag?
There's two sides. So I think for people who are single offenders,
yeah,
or people who are in there for lesser crimes. Like, for example, we were watching the programme The Bear last night, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone because it's really good to watch, but there was a point where someone punched someone and they weren't sure if they were going to wake up from it and they were facing manslaughter. Someone like that should definitely not be in prison, throw away the key, because it wasn't intended. And I think even people who do intend to kill people, there should be an act of rehabilitation for them, especially when they've got these mental health issues and they've had these rough starts in life. But when you're someone that has proven time and time again that you have such little regard for other people and their feelings, should there be any reform for you? Why do you get that chance?
Yeah, I guess.
I think it does depend on your crime. I think there should be rehabilitation for people who have done lesser things or one-time offenders, but for people who just show no remorse and no care for anyone else,
I guess the point I was trying to make was prison is like it's a one size fits all, but it doesn't actually fit anyone. It's like this is how we can contain these people. Like sometimes it might help them, sometimes there's some structure there, but in general it's just kind of like just get these people out of society. As much as I obviously have complete disdain for Daniel LaPlante, I don't think that he should be left to rot in prison in terms of like not get any counselling and not getting I don't like the thought of anyone, despite the horrible things they've done, being tormented. I think he should still get the counselling and all this, but I just don't think he should get the freedom of life again, because like I said, he took away a 5-year-old child and an 8-year-old child's life. He also took away a man's whole family in one evening, and that man came home from work to find his whole family just gone. Why? Because he wanted to. So why the fuck should he get out and get a whole new chance at life? But should he not get counselling and maybe a chance to understand why he's done things? I think that's beneficial for anyone. I think it's some kind of a structured environment that isn't like is there more to benefit him than just to keep him locked in. But that's in general, because I'm just rambling, ignore me.
no you've got a good point. I just personally think
it's just prison's built to be profitable, not to help people, and it shows in cases like this where
I mean, in an ideal world he would have gone to prison for what he did to the Bowens, and he would have received counselling and rehabilitation there at that point, and would have maybe stayed for longer or had some sort of, what's it called when people are on like probation period, where he was made to attend counselling and maybe had a tag. Obviously he didn't have them then, but nowadays would have maybe had a tag and not been allowed to go out of his house and stuff, and that would have been the right time for rehabilitation, but instead it seemed like he probably went to prison at that point, didn't get any rehabilitation.
You little shit, right? Good for nothing.
Yeah, and for me, the chance of rehabilitation was lost. And that might not be Daniel's fault, but he still chose to do what he did. And I suppose we could go around in circles, so there's not much else to say really, except watch something really funny after listening to this case. Just do something feel good, like hug your pet, watch a comedy.
Check your crawl spaces.
And just look after yourselves. And other than that, guys, stay spooky.
Nailed it.
Hey guys, if you have a ghost story or a case suggestion, please email us, truecrimecovenpod@gmail.com.
You can also find us on Twitter @truecrimecoven or on Instagram and Facebook, where we are @truecrimecovenpod.
Also, it would mean the absolute world to us if you could rate us wherever you're listening to this right now, be it Spotify, Apple Music, or if you're on YouTube, give us a little thumbs up, click that bell, get notifications every time we post.
Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts from.
Make these two witches smile.
Thanks, witches.